You are listening to the Air Hug Community Podcast, episode 85. Hello there and welcome or welcome back. If you are new here, this is the Air Hug Community Podcast and I am your host, Judy Arizosa. I am a midlife lady who is someone who loves to share stories from myself and special guests that reflect on just how midlife really goes, not how we think it should go. We talk about the good, the bad, the messy, the ugly, the wonderful, all the emotions. And this is a place where we actually can grow from our experiences. So, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started. You don't learn from your experience, you learn from processing your experience. John Dewey. Care for your own lantern so that others may benefit from its light. And that is a Zen saying. So if you notice on this podcast, we do bring a lot of guests on who share their experiences. And one of the things that I noticed is that they are learning and we are learning right along with them from processing through the experience. And so today we're bringing on a guest who is talking about a winning paradigm. In fact, he has a podcast by the same name. And he talks about winning in the sense of however you want to define it. It can be defined by money, by time, by bringing yourself out of darkness, by getting fulfillment, by serving others, in numerous other ways. But I found this to be a very interesting conversation because throughout this conversation, I kept thinking that Alunas is processing his experience as he's telling it to us, and we get to do the same thing right along with him. You want to talk about winning?
Correct. And it's more along the lines of your definition of winning. So when I talk about winning, it's whatever you decide. And I go a lot into that, talking about my own personal experiences where it was things where I had to relearn how to think. And to me, that's what winning was able to get myself out of that dark place. When you think about anybody in any winners, per se, whether it's athletes, business people, people in life, they're always finding those new ways to reinvent themselves. So that's essentially what the winner's paradigm is looking at it and saying, hey, it's okay not to be okay. Let's get better.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Air Hug Community. Today we have a guest, but Alunas, I'm going to have you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit today about why you want to talk about winning. And I also want to hear about music, because I know that you mentioned at one point music being a big thing, but go ahead with your intro. And it's just going to be a conversation and I will interrupt as needed.
Perfect, Judy. Well, thank you again for letting me come on your show. It's an honor to be able to speak. And two, you hit it on the nail already with asking that perfect question. So I will keep in mind, doing the introduction and music. So my name is Alunas Havens. I'm the host and founder of the Winner's Paradigm podcast and consulting. I'm originally from Fresno, California, where I came up in a split household. So my parents separated when I was about 3, almost 4 years old. And with them, a lot of the things that I went through in my life was just them being young, and youth is spent on youth. So in their case, my mom's 20, my dad's 20, or my mom was 19, dad was 21. So they're in the party phase when I was born, so for a good portion of my life, was experiencing all these things, watching it happen. When I turned 5 years old, my parents treated me like an adult. So that was part of it as well.
5 years old? Wait, really?
Things, yes, like just the certain conversations we would have, they expected me to act older. So when they would talk to me, they would talk to me as if I was an adult. And it kind of always went in there where it was 1 week I'd be at my mom's house and I would be able to be a kid. And then when I'd go with my dad, at the time he didn't have a girlfriend. So it was me it was me cleaning up the house, doing everything around it and kind of, turning that on and off switch. So originally, that's where I started, I guess, picking up on things because I went through counseling growing up. My parents were in court from when I was 4 years old to 18. So that whole time, going through counseling, kind of figuring these things out about myself. Um, Ended up in high school. I moved with my dad in eighth grade. It didn't work out. Moved back with my mom sophomore year. My parents had a crazy arrangement where I lived with my dad 3 weekends a month, which prior to that, I didn't really like him anymore. He ended up taking a job out in Oakland, California, which was 2 hours away from where I was living. So I was living with his wife at the time before I moved out, and little communication with him. That's where I started getting, real depressed because I was on my own. Me and his wife weren't on good terms, and for those things, it kind of at first started getting me thinking. And it was, hey, what do you want to do? Well, I want to get out of my situation. So I moved back with my mom and ended up getting in problems with my stepdad because it was not necessarily sometimes limiting beliefs, but it was, he was really conservative in the way he was thinking. But anything I said, was, oh, that's ghetto or, oh, that's this. And it was kind of one of those where you can't express yourself because you're going to be labeled as this. And I'm like, well, if I don't act that way, if I just want to wear these clothes, why can't I do that? Why do I have to stay in this box? So good point is when you talked about music, I grew up listening to, all types of music. But in my case, I'm a heavy metal fan, love Black Sabbath, Metallica, Pink Floyd. And that was where, I kind of found my niche for myself was, I would listen to music and I'd feel connected. And part of when I talk, I say The Wall. Pink Floyd has an album, The Wall, where the lead singer's talking about how in his head, and the way he grew up, he created a wall to protect himself from life. Now, what that meant was he didn't realize he had a problem and all these things were popping up. And for me, it was the same exact way, the way I reacted. I was real angry. It was just because of the situations I was in or the people I was around. So when I realized that the underlying problem wasn't necessarily me, it was, taking myself out of a situation to get better. That's where it was. So ended up going off to the Marine Corps for 4 years. Amazing time. I loved it. And what was funny when I got in the Marine Corps, they were like, you're a leader. You don't have time to be over here running around like a chicken with their head cut off and not knowing what to do, bumping into people. It was one of those, hey, it's time for you to be the leader. So I was 19 years old, became my own boss for a year. Best and worst thing that ever happened to me. The reason why is once you give someone that power and they start realizing that they can do anything, you can't limit them. So from there, I tore all the cartilage in my right knee, which gave me that first roadblock to where I started, again, battling it because I was basically the best, more qualified person in my unit. And from there, when I got hurt, I got shelved. So it was, you're no longer this person because you're not healthy. Now you're this person. So for me, it was battling ego because it's tough, and like when you rise to those positions, you feel like you're well accomplished. You're more accomplished than anybody else. Your track record speaks for itself when you're trying to get that promotion. And the difference in the military is how physically fit you are. That was one thing that got me angry, so I battled that for a year. My last year of the Marine Corps, I kind of knew I was going to be getting out. I didn't know when. I was just, I want to get this surgery, move on. End up getting to my last 3 weeks, figure out that my surgeon got orders. I no longer was going to be able to stay in the Marine Corps. So that's where kind of reality hit me. And part of that as well, was always having a good backup plan. So I was already working on my bachelor's business management. And that's where I kind of said, all right, well, I want to have my own business eventually. So let's kind of migrate through there. What do we got to do? Well, start working in home improvement sales. Let me tell you, that was probably one of the worst things I've ever done, Judy.
One of the worst
It was a
things?
tough crowd.
Yeah.
No, it was tough. It was tough. It wasn't worse. I don't mind it. I traveled 3.5 counties. So the reason why I say it was tough was I had a commute sometimes. So it could be a 2-hour drive from San Diego, California to almost LA. And then it's like you get home at midnight, back at it 7 o'clock in the morning the next day. So that's where I say it's tough, it's mentally draining because I'm still working on my bachelor's, trying to have the family with the wife. and start working all these extra hours. So I find out there, hey, this isn't for me. End up going off to a mortgage brokerage where it was a great position that I was in. I loved it, definitely enhanced my skills there. But initially, I started realizing, and part of home improvement sales as well, was when I was in the Marine Corps, it was a different terminology. It was a different way of thinking versus, coming into the civilian sector. Keep in mind, like you said, I'm only in my short life. I'm 24 now. So when I got out the military, I'm 22. But like I said, worst thing, best thing I ever did, become my own boss, because now I start thinking a little bit differently. I'm diving into things, researching, talking to people. So when I interacted with people my same age, we start bumping heads. And it was one of those like, oh, why don't you do this? And I'm like, yeah. Or someone, for instance, said, why don't you go to college full time? And I'm like, I don't have that opportunity and luxury as some people, and I'm like, some people it works. You can absolutely do that. But in my case, left home for a reason, ended up getting married young because that's what I felt like me and my wife wanted to do. From there, I was like, hey, I'm going to go to school online or part-time doing hybrid classes. So I know in my case, the only way I learn is by doing it by practical application. So I'm like, if I learn this from a textbook, I can go apply it in sales and so forth and learn. So explaining those things to people and realizing, hey, there is a gap. Not all people share each other's same experiences, go through it. So it led me to creating the Winner's Paradigm podcast, where it was kind of my outlet to vent, to talk about these personal things, talk about, how me and you were talking previously about those mindsets, or how men are supposed to be macho. And it's, yes, they are, to a degree, traditionally, people want men to be that. But at the same time, a lot of men don't talk about their feelings. They don't talk about what bothers them. It bottles up. And then from there leads to more things down the line. In my case, I kept drinking and drinking and drinking, not really realizing where it was coming from, where it came out that it was a lot of trauma I was running away from. It was, being labeled or not really displaying who I am to people, because again, I wanted to live in that box, because if I'm in that box, I feel free.
So I have a couple of comments. I think it's very interesting now, that people don't necessarily, there isn't like one formula. You grow up, you're a teenager, you go to high school, you go to college, you get a job, or you start a career, or you whatever. I feel like most people are more like you, where they do things non-traditionally. It's like, I don't feel like there's tradition as much anymore as what was expected years ago. And I like to see people doing things in ways that actually feel right for them versus feel right by what others expect.
100%. And in my case, it absolutely was that. Don't get me wrong, I did get admitted into a couple universities in California, and I could have went there. But again, like you said, it's knowing yourself and knowing what your process is. Again, as being young, 18 years old, you don't have money. So when you get money in your hands and you've never had it before, and you don't have good habits, saving money, learning of the power of money, you start blowing it. I did it in the Marine Corps, and I'm luckily, I had a stable job because of the Marine Corps. So I was able to make more money and learn that lesson. But it was one of those things, going to college, where I was like, at this time, it's not good for me, because I know I'm going to blow my opportunity away. So the non-traditional route is what helped me. So that's what I like talking about as well, is there's no clear cut or cookie cutter answer for people. Hey, if you want to go the non-traditional route, you can. If you want to go traditionally to college, get a career, absolutely. And that's what we're here for, is to guide people, show them that whatever they want to do, as long as you put that time into it, you're resourceful, you find the people that are doing what you want to do at the level you want to, at least communicate with them or try to earn some of their time so you can learn how you can become that person as well. So it's one of those.
That's and from that, you created the Winner's Paradigm.
Absolutely.
So the Winner's Paradigm, I'm looking right at your website right now. It says is simply recalibrating your mind to mirror the level of success that you manifest. Can we talk about that?
Yes. Huge.
Yeah,
So
that's a
first,
lot in one statement.
exactly. So let's take it. I got out the military 2020. So I haven't even been out 2 full years yet. And when I was getting out the military, if you're familiar with him, his name's Zach Babcock. He's part of a group, Alpha Podcasters. He's the owner of the company, Podcast Powertrain. And he posted in their Facebook group. He was like, he put something one day. I went in, commented, and I said, "Hey Zach, I just wanted to say you're truly inspirational. Your story touched me. I got out the military, and I'm seeing him, got out of prison, turned his life around.
Mm-hmm.
That's inspiring to me because I'm like, well, if he can do it, what makes me think I can't? Because when I got out, it was tough. Like I was telling you, first going to home improvement sales, and I'm young, so it was looking just really young. And I'm talking to these people, how old are you? And it was one of those things. To where it was kind of funny was not realizing the kind of terminology I was talking about. Because again, I was in the military, so still real fresh, not really noticing these things, and then saying, "Oh, you know what? I actually have a lot that I need to work on myself for." So it was awesome, when I commented in that chat. The chief marketing officer, Paul Tokazulu, which back then he was a consultant, he messaged me, "Hey, brother, I just wanted to say, if you ever need a thing, let me know." And that was huge for me because I was like, you know what? Thank you. I'm going to use you. So first, he taught me about networking. He would send me people, "Hey, I think this person would align more with you." They finally dropped for Christmas that year, 2020. They dropped like a $48 for their mastermind group. So in my head, I'm like, well, I can string my money together. I'm going to pay for this because I see value in that. I can go to these people who have podcasts. So then I end up getting it created. Paul's the first person I interviewed, and it was awesome, talking to the mentor, but showing the process of, hey, I really didn't know what was going on. I'm going through my stuff, life's happening, and then now being able to replicate it and say, hey, this is where we're at. They ended up offering me a position to be a moderator for the Alpha Podcasters group to help other podcasters. So it was huge for me because initially this was less than 2 years ago. And it was one of those things where it was, do I want to take the leap? This is frightening. So when I created the Winner's Paradigm, it was exactly that, where I can explain to them, hey, this is what's going on in life. These are problems people face. These are things that changed my perception on life, made me a better person, which didn't lead to great things. So if you don't want to repeat my mistakes, and you want to take advantage of the simulated experience, learn from my mistakes so you don't replicate it for your life. Or in your case, hey, if this is your wake-up call to do better, let's do better, because all it takes is just one thing. And that one thing turns into another habit. And boom, now you have, a line of success. Then it comes in, that definition of winning, to where it's the small things, to where now you're thinking positively, you're appreciating what you have in life, versus before where you may have been just angry because you're not where you want to be in life.
Yeah. Wow. You've touched on a lot of different things. We have talked about here in the AirHug community, we've talked a lot about mindset. We've also talked a lot about anger. And so I think it's really interesting that you brought up both of those things, because in a lot of respects, anger is something that can get you to change. If it can get you to take action if you want it to, or it can be a way of life. And it sounds like you grew up amongst people who were always angry.
Correct. And that was part of it, as well as I had that problem. Flip of a dime, just start flipping out on people, went into it. And what's funny is all those things, like we said, if you don't solve trauma, that comes out. And when I was in the Marine
Say
Corps,
that again. I want people to hear that. If you don't solve trauma.
If you don't solve trauma, it's going to come out at a later time, and you're going to have to solve it, or you're going to keep repeating that same cycle. So I'm deployed to Kuwait, right? And over there, I like to say it's kind of funny. I'm always saying over there, the intensity amplified by 100 or 10 out of nowhere. And it's one of those things as well. Why? Well, it's because of mission, and now we're doing flight ops into Syria, because that was the time when ISIS was big over there. So it was, if we're not doing things correctly, if procedures aren't followed, lives could be left, right? So different shift in mindset. The reason why I say it like that is because, again, I'm a hothead. And with the intensity being that high, I had those miscues where I started just screaming at people. And that's where part of it too, the old style of the Marine Corps, they used to scream at you. They would say whatever. So I was adapting that. My boss at the time loved it.
Mm-hmm.
End up one time, my E4, because I was E3 at that time. So he's supposed to be in charge of me. I'm in charge of him because he learned wrong. And that's where kind of perspective hit me, was he was taught wrong initially. So again, how are we going to know what we're doing wrong if we're never told? And all of a sudden we get a new leader who doesn't teach us.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we're never going to be able to fix it. So that was the scenario with him. But again, I'm young, 18, 19 years old. I don't know these things. So it was one of those, piecing it together. Oh, he was taught wrong. Teach him the right way. Be patient. Maybe someone didn't do that with him. Again, if you're screaming at people, it's effective to me, but it's not effective to you. So it was one of those learning leadership. And that was where the anger hit me, drinking 6 to 12 cups of coffee a day. And when I came back stateside, it got even worse. It was one of those things where I couldn't process life because, again, the life over there was real fast paced.
Mm-hmm.
Coming down here, it was slower. So all of a sudden it was, and again, military's like that. There is no excuses. Here's the mission, get it done. And it was with people talking to them. Well, I can't do this because I'm tired. I can't do this because I'm working. And it was just like,
Was this when you were in sales, trying to get people to persuade,
Correct. So it started hitting me when I was in sales, when I was hearing all these things, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, these aren't big problems. Like, for example, I was selling HVAC systems. So I'm selling ACs to people, and these are big ticket items, 15, 20,000. So they're telling me that it's 110-degree weather. They're sweating their butt off. And me, I hate the heat because, again, I was in the desert multiple times, 3 different deserts. So when they would tell me these things, I would get frustrated, and I would be like, well, why would you want to just keep being here sweating your butt off if not, but it was learning that, hey, one, we're going to take care of me first, get right what we need to get right with me. 2, we're going to attack the next portion there. So in this case, it was, I had to make sure myself was okay before I can go into sales and get better. When I started applying those things, listening to courses, I even just bought a sales course myself. It was $350. And a lot of people will say, well, that's stupid. It's cookie cutter because, again, you can learn this from anybody or on YouTube. But again, it's up to you to interpret the knowledge you're given. Yeah. It's up to you to figure it out. Yes, a lot of the topics in that course were things we already knew. Problem is, do you apply every single thing?
And here's the thing. If you put money into something, you're going to take it a lot more seriously than if you get that information for free. You're going to value your investment that much more. Don't you agree?
Oh, 100%. I finished that course. And what was funny was my sales numbers at that time were above average and they skyrocketed up. And it was because I was listening. I was figuring it out. I was like finding out, okay, well, what's their why behind it? Mm-hmm. And I ended up now working at a company where I help veterans their VA claim. So it was finding, something that aligned with my mission to be able to do it. So when it led to my consulting, it was, why am I helping somebody? Because I've been there as well. I've been at that rough parts where you want to talk to somebody, where maybe, you go to therapy, and with therapy, it was, oh, take this medication. It's going to make you feel better. Take it, have a bad experience. Well, that's not how antidepressants work. I'm like, I'm telling you, I start thinking bad, like it's not going well for me. I'm not taking it again. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was learning how to meditate, and learning how to control my anger, and maybe, releasing it, as in writing a paper or reading a book, taking a walk, being constructive. And it was all these things that I didn't know prior to, but, finding it out for my way. So when I'm able to help people, I'm able to say, hey, this is the path I went through. I totally understand where you're coming from. What do you think we should do to be able to start helping you kind of get those ducks in a row? Show yourself, hey, I can do it. All I got to do is just put that one foot in front of the other.
And all of these things are tools, getting right back to your opening statement about recalibrating your mind.
Absolutely. And it's all about that. You're, as that saying goes, you're only as good as the people you keep around. And it's absolutely true. If you have people that are stagnant and not really caring, in my case, a lot of people, that's stupid, you're spending money on this, that's negative, and when you
Yeah.
take them out of the equation, you get in mastermind groups like we are, you're in these communities, you're able to see exactly, hey, you know what, we actually have value. We talk to other people that are doing exactly what we are. All of a sudden, we took the motivation factor. We're inspired because we're continuously networking with people like ourselves who have been there, done that. So
Mhm.
now we're able to leverage that and then use that as our ability versus, the disability of having the wrong people around.
Yeah, you have to choose your people carefully,
That is
for
what I've
sure.
learned early on, and it helped me so much throughout my life as well. Was learn those things. I give a quick example. One of my friends in the military, and I'm a bigger guy, so I always taped out. I never made weight, and he doesn't make weight. First thing he does, throws me under the bus, and I'm like, well, let's go do like the weighting procedure. So I pass, he doesn't. He starts, cursing my name, so forth. And it was one of those, it's where it was, hey, is this really your friend? Like after everything, you think that he's everything to you. Well, he's just throwing your name under the bus for him messing up, not you. So it was one of those lessons where, man, that was a great friend. Yes, he's a great friend when it comes to him or hanging out, but maybe, professional setting, not the greatest to keep around,
No,
to
I wouldn't
associate.
call that a friend at all. I would call that an illusion.
Exactly. Well, that's what it ended up being. Now we're cool because we finally had that conversation, talking. But
Mhm.
early on, I was 19 years old then. Something I didn't know, and it was learning those things earlier on, and being able to translate that now.
That's big. That's big. You've learned some hard lessons early in your life, which is probably going to serve you well going forward. But I think we never stop learning. And
Oh,
I love the question that you have is how are you much longer are you going to stand in mediocrity and unfulfillment before you decide to go all in?
exactly. And what's funny on that, I actually seen something, talked to a couple of people, and they say it actually takes you more time to do what you're not supposed to do or what you're supposed to do than what you're taking to do the wrong thing. And in this case, if we know, like in our cases, you wanted to start the podcast. That took a lot of initiative. So I applaud you for doing that, because I know for me, it took months, right? But you did it anyway, and you got it done because you knew, hey, this is what I want to do, regardless, weekly, even if you're working.
Well,
Exactly. So,
I'll tell you, for this podcast, I thought about it for 3 years.
uh-huh.
And then I literally started thinking about it early in 2017. And in 2000, must be 2020. Yeah, it was 2020 in summer. I actually gave myself a date. I said, you will launch in September of 2020. And I went to my calendar and I like ironed it all out. I'm like, all right, I will publish every single Tuesday. I will launch on a Tuesday in September. And I just worked backwards from that. I'm like, I'm going to learn what I have to learn. I'm going to do it. That was my launch date. It was whatever the last Tuesday in September was. And this audience will tell you I have not missed a Tuesday since. And we've actually done some bonus episodes. But and as we have talked about in the little forum that we're in, that consistency is key. And for me, that's the fulfilling thing. Like I have decided to serve an audience and I'm going to do it consistently. And I'm grateful for guests like you who want to come in and share their struggles and share that they've come out on the other side. And that's what I like to hear. And that's why I actually wanted you on today is you've had some struggles in your short life. And I hope you're not offended that I call that short, but
Oh, not at all.
I don't mean anything bad by that. On the contrary, because I think you've overcome a lot. And I just love to hear guests come on and tell us how they do these things. And I'm telling you, 10 out of 10 guests, 100% of guests have all come on the other side of what they've done because they've changed their mindset.
You have to. And if you think about it, part of it, it's kind of funny now. And the reason why I say it, it's kind of when I was growing up, one thing, and it's a couple of these things, with my parents. Yes, they were strict. They were tough with me, tough as nails, as I say. But it was one of those things where it was like, don't be the victim. And they always made that a point, was
Hmm.
not being the victim. And definitely that was a great learning point, was it was like, I don't feel bad for you. You shouldn't feel bad for yourself. And I'm over here like, what? Like wanting some sort of empathy. And it was where they were like, nope, we're not showing that to you. And for me, that's where I started learning, it was like, hey, you're not the victim. This is why it happened. Okay, well, they're being strict with me. Well, what did I do? Well, let's make sure you don't do that again. So it's all these things where you're piecing it together to learn about it. And in order to make that change, you got to first acknowledge it, like we talked about. And then you got to say, hey, take action. Like you said, this is the date I'm dropping on. I did the same thing. I kept pushing it, wanted everything to be perfect. Finally, was able to get it to where I can be able to put out, learned everything I needed a week before my daughter's born. I'm dropping this. Why? Because I promised myself I'm going to be the best I can be for her. One of those ways is by having my outlet so I can ask those people. And if not, be surrounded by those people to when something comes up, I can say, hey, I have a quick question. Would you mind helping me out with this scenario or kind of giving me some external advice? Because this is what I'm thinking right now. So you can get that feedback to say, hey, great job what you're doing, or hey, this is what you should do, or have you ever thought about this? And it's one of those things where when you surround yourself with those people, like we were saying, it changes it. So like you said, that mindset, and why I have that question there is it's really up to people to figure out for themselves is, hey, what do I want? How are we going to make it feasible? Now let's go do it.
Yeah. And, not being afraid to ask and reach out, ask questions is huge, because we need to do that our whole life. We're never going to have all the answers. And there's always going to be something we can learn by asking questions. Right. I think that's
Absolutely. And in this case, I've learned so much by just doing that, networking, talking to people. That's the only thing. I actually was on a podcast yesterday and they said, hey, what's one thing you wish you would have done? I said, start the podcast sooner, because I've learned so much more. I've gotten in touch with so many great people. And it's like, why couldn't I have done this sooner versus, putting it off? It needs to be perfect. Done is better than perfect.
done is better than perfect 100% of the time. And
Exactly.
what is perfect? It's an illusion that someone else has dictated. Perfect is, it's like vapor. It doesn't exist.
Exactly. And that comes for some of us, from that illusion, like you said, appeal of others, and wanting other people to accept it, when we got to accept what we're doing first in order to
Yeah.
make anyone accept it. And once they see, oh, you know what, he has the confidence, they have the conviction for it, they have this mission to help people, then it starts clicking for people as, oh, I want to join that movement too. And there you go, you have a small following.
Yeah. Right. And you know what? It's a marathon. You're not going to have a million viewers in your first 3 months. You just, whatever you have, but you continue to serve an audience. And when they feel that they have gotten benefit, they're going to share that, and they're going to continue to share it, and there will be a ripple effect.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And I'd say that's the awesome thing as well, is even starting out, like you said, the numbers are what they are. And initially, and if you are a numbers person, you look at it, it's a little discouraging, but it's not, it's a start point. And for me, I had a couple of people who reached out, when I was thinking initially, okay, you know what, I have it out. I'm not sure if anybody likes it. Hey, I just want to say great thing. One of my uncles messaged me, which I didn't think he would. And he said, you know what, I'm actually really proud of you. You came out, you started talking about things. This family has a tradition of being tough, and of being that tough one. And yes, you followed in those footsteps, but now you're speaking up about these things and saying, hey, this is what people go through. I know what other people are, and have been through in whatever situations in life, so we can be able to talk to them about it. So for me, that was huge. I had a couple people, but to have somebody that actually understood, and it was like, you know what,
Yeah.
I
He had a
get where you're
little,
from, because he felt the same way. And those are the conversations people don't have. Um, and it leads us into having that wrong paradigm where we start thinking that way, and going down that path, when in reality, all we needed is one person to really listen to us. And then we can say, all right, we're not wrong. We're not crazy for what we're thinking. We are on the right path. We're just on our own journey trying to figure it out.
literally on our own journey, on your own journey. And I think it's really important to just keep your eyes open, because sometimes what we think is a dead end is maybe just not a dead end. It might have more opportunity when you kind of, again, reframe your mind. And
Absolutely.
you have demonstrated that already a number of times. So, and by the way, congratulations on your daughter.
Thank you so much. And absolutely, your mindset's ever changing. I felt like finally I was getting it, home improvement sales. I thought I was finally getting it. And then my grandfather passes away. And he was kind of that one that anything that happened in my dad's house, he would come live with us. He would take care of me. His last year of life, we started getting close. So it was one of those things where I haven't figured it out. He passes. I don't. That's my person. Well, now it's a bigger hurdle in life. I need to take a jump. I need to figure out what my belief systems are, what I'm for, what my values are, and who I am as a person, and follow that. And if people don't align with that, that's it. So it took all that to figure out that I did do it, to hit that rivet again, to be able to feel better, to say, hey, this is who I am. This is what I represent. I'm not about negativity anymore. If you're on this path that's down that way, I'll talk with you on what you can do. But if not, you're going on your way right now. We'll talk later on when maybe you understand. And it was one of those things for me to where, like you said, we're on our own journey. We're going through everything, even when you think you got it, always be prepared. And again, having those tools, that's what's going to keep us from when something happens, boom, let's roll into the next thing. We're prepared. We know exactly who we are. All we have to do is just be able to know how to react, and then two, be able to make it happen.
Yeah. And what was really nice was that you had that time with your grandfather. You had a year where you actually had someone you could depend on and learn from and have your eyes opened.
Absolutely. And what it came down to was a lot of things. It was, generations of some things that, that happened, that got carried down, and that got passed on to me. And it was one of those things where it was, this is the way things are. And it was why, and that's where when you start questioning things, that's the first step, is why is it this way? Well, why can't it be a different way? Why can't we be better? Why do we limit ourselves or make excuses instead of this? And with him, it was having that conversation to where I figured out that the reason why, it's me and my dad didn't have the best relationship. So I always went for that to somebody else, and finally with my grandfather, I was like, a lot of the good traits that my dad has is from him. And it was, he was the one that would bring my dad back down to life. So to me, it was going directly to the source and saying, hey, what do I do for this? And having that person to listen. So it was awesome to have that. And then in turn, when he passes, to learn, grow with it, and say, you know what, I'm really glad I had that opportunity with him, because I was able to kind of learn things. For the first time that year, he was finally able to understand, okay, you know what, you did go through a lot. I didn't think it was that bad. Well, let's talk. And it was one of those is, hey, that's what we have to do. That's what the podcast is for, is to be able to talk with people so we all can grow from it versus, going on our own path and not sharing.
Yeah, I think these stories of people's experiences are really, really important. It lets people know that, like we said before, not every path is the same. We don't have to be expected to go down a certain path, and that whatever experience we're having is our own experience. And we can look at it, like you said, we can look at it with anger. We can look at it with curiosity. We can look at it as opportunity. Every weakness is an opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. Because it just tells us what we need to work on.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So I would like to thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story. I think you are the first military person that we have had on. And so that's pretty exciting. And go out there and kill it. Good luck with your daughter and your wife. You're going to do great.
Thank you so much, Judy. Well, I appreciate you again for letting me come on your show today.
It's my pleasure. Okay, so that was Alunas Havens, and you can contact him through his website, thewinnersparadigm.xyz, and I will put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening, and don't you agree that as you were listening to his story. You could just feel him processing through what actually he had gone through. I really did feel that, and I feel like we got a chance to do that too. And so, what's your winning mindset? Do you have any idea? Think about it. And I would love to hear about it. If you want to share it with me, you can contact me. My info is in the show notes. And of course, feel free to share this episode on social media, and come on back next Tuesday for a new episode here on the Air Hug Community Podcast.